When a young girl nervously approaches mall security stammering about a suspicious bag, the guard initially dismisses it as just another false alarm. But as he listens, one chilling detail changes everything, throwing them all into chaos and setting off a desperate race against time. Emery Clark stood behind a large blue dumpster, the sharp smell of rotting food and spilled grease stinging her nose. She clutched her tattered backpack close to her chest, keeping still as she rummaged through the discarded cardboard boxes for anything worth taking. The sound of footsteps echoed down the alley, sharp against the silence. Emery froze, holding her breath, peeking through a gap between the dumpster and the wall. Two men walked briskly into the alley, their movements hurried and purposeful. One wore a hooded sweatshirt with the hood pulled low over his face, while the other had a buzz cut and a jagged scar down the side of his cheek. They moved like men on a mission, their eyes darting nervously, their footsteps deliberate. "It's done," the man in the hood muttered, glancing over his shoulder. His voice was low but carried an edge of urgency. He exhaled sharply, as if shaking off tension, then stuffed his hands deep into his pockets. "You set the timer?" the scarred man asked, his fingers twitching as if he wanted to light a cigarette but knew better. "Yeah, 25 minutes. By then, the place will be chaos. No way they'll clear it in time." "Good." The hooded man pulled a phone from his pocket and glanced at the screen. "No one will see it coming, and by the time they do, we'll be long gone." The scarred man nodded, shifting his weight from foot to foot. "You sure this is going to work? We don't get second chances if they catch on too fast." "It'll work," the hooded man said confidently. "We planned for everything. Just stick to the route and keep your head down." Emery's breath caught in her throat as she pressed herself against the cold metal of the dumpster, every muscle in her body tensed. Whatever they were talking about, it was big, and it was happening now. Emery's chest tightened. She ducked lower, her heart hammering. She didn't understand everything, but the words timer and chaos made her stomach twist with dread. The scarred man looked toward the alley's exit, scanning the area. "Let's move." Emery watched as they disappeared around the corner, their voices fading. She waited a few more seconds, her breath shallow, before slowly emerging from her hiding spot. She wiped her clammy hands on her jeans, her mind racing. What should she do? Call the police? She didn't have a phone, and even if she did, would they believe her? Adults rarely did. Peering around the corner, she ensured the men were gone before stepping onto the sidewalk. Her eyes darted to the mall entrance, where the bustle of shoppers continued as if nothing was wrong. Swallowing hard, she forced herself to take a step forward. Then another. Her gaze landed on the security guard near the information desk. He looked like someone who might listen, someone who might help. Clutching her backpack tightly, Emery made her way toward the mall. Her stomach churning with fear, her chest tightened every time she thought about approaching the guard. What if he didn't believe her? Worse, what if the men came back and saw her talking? She let out a shaky breath and glanced at the guard again. Mr. Lawn stood stiffly, his broad shoulders squared in a dark uniform that had seen better days. His badge gleamed under the fluorescent lights, and a walkie-talkie clipped to his belt crackled faintly with static. His face, lined with years of experience, looked stern but not unkind. Gathering all the courage she could muster, Emery stepped forward, her sneakers squeaking softly on the polished floor. By the time she reached the desk, her throat had gone dry. "Excuse me, sir." Her voice came out barely above a whisper. Lawn looked down, his brow furrowing slightly as he took in the girl's disheveled appearance. "You lost?" Emery shook her head quickly. "No, sir. I saw something." She glanced over her shoulder, her voice dropping lower. "Something bad?" Lawn leaned forward, his expression shifting to concern. "What do you mean, bad? What did you see?" "There were these two men," Emery began, stumbling over her words. "Behind the mall, near the dumpsters. They were talking about something about a timer, and they left a bag in the food court." Lawn straightened, skepticism evident. "A bag, huh? And a timer?" His tone was neutral, but there was a hint of doubt in his eyes. Emery nodded vigorously. "Yes, sir. I saw them. They left it and walked away really fast. One of them said something about nobody knowing until it was too late." Lawn rubbed the back of his neck, debating whether this was worth interrupting his otherwise quiet afternoon. Look, kid, people leave stuff around all the time. It's probably nothing. It's not nothing. Emery's voice rose, panic creeping in. I know what I heard. Please, you have to check. The desperation in her tone gave Lorne pause. He studied her for a moment, noticing the way her hands trembled and her eyes darted nervously. This wasn't just a bored kid making up stories. Something had rattled her. All right, Lorne said, his voice softening. Let's check it out. But first, let's move somewhere quieter. He gestured for Emery to follow him, leading her away from the bustling entrance to a quieter hallway near the management office. Pulling out his walkie-talkie, he called for backup. Lorne here. Possible suspicious package reported in the food court. Need someone to check it out. As the words left his mouth, Emery's anxiety spiked. She fidgeted with the straps of her backpack, her breathing quickening. They're going to come back, she muttered, more to herself than to Lorne. What if they see me talking to you? Lorne crouched slightly, meeting her eyes. Hey, relax. You did the right thing by speaking up. We're going to handle it, okay? Emery nodded reluctantly, but the fear in her eyes didn't fade. She kept glancing toward the main entrance as if expecting the two men to reappear at any moment. The sound of a distant siren made her flinch, her fingers gripping the straps of her backpack tighter. I don't want to be here when they come back, she whispered, her voice barely audible. Lorne's expression softened. You don't have to be. We're moving you somewhere safe. The police will be here any minute, and they'll take it from here. Emery swallowed hard, nodding, but her feet felt cemented to the spot. She had been alone for so long, navigating the world without relying on anyone. Now, with so much at stake, trusting strangers felt foreign and terrifying. Come on, Lorne said gently, guiding her toward a quieter corridor. We'll wait in the management office where it's safe. As they walked, Emery's mind raced. What if the men weren't alone? What if they had been watching her all along? She squeezed her eyes shut for a brief moment, pushing the thoughts away. She had to believe she had done the right thing. But as they neared the office door, she couldn't shake the unsettling feeling that something much bigger was about to unfold. Within minutes, another security guard arrived. Lorne briefed him quickly before escorting Emery toward the management office. He knew the next steps, alerting the authorities and possibly evacuating the mall, would escalate the situation. As he glanced down at the girl walking beside him, he couldn't shake the nagging feeling that her story, however implausible, might hold more truth than he initially thought. The mall's food court buzzed with midday energy, sunlight streaming through the high windows. At first glance, it was an ordinary lunch hour. But then, the announcement came. A sharp, authoritative voice crackled over the loudspeakers. Attention, shoppers. Please proceed to the nearest exit. This is an emergency evacuation. Remain calm and follow staff instructions. For a second, confusion rippled through the crowd. People paused mid-step, unsure if they had misheard. But when a second announcement followed, this time with a more urgent tone, the tension snapped. Chaos erupted. Shoppers scrambled toward the exits, clutching children and shopping bags. Tables in the food court overturned as people rushed to get out. A woman screamed for her daughter, her small frame lost in the panicked crowd. Detective Evelyn Martell entered the scene like a cold wind cutting through the chaos, her sharp eyes scanning the disarray. Tall and composed, she strode into the food court, flanked by two officers. She was used to high-pressure situations, and this was no exception. Lorne gestured toward Emery as Martell approached. Kid says she saw two men leave a suspicious bag in the food court, says they mentioned a timer. Martell crouched to meet Emery's gaze. You did the right thing coming forward, she said. Now, I need you to think really hard. Did you see anything else? Anything unusual? Emery hesitated, her lips trembling. I think one of them said something about a countdown. Martell's pulse quickened. Countdown? Are you sure? Emery nodded, her voice barely above a whisper. I didn't know what it meant, but it sounded bad. Martell stood, her mind racing. Get the bomb squad in here. Now.